Welcome to day 9 of 21 days of fear. Yes. Today has been a profound day, lots of releasing, and has brought me to today's topic, which is the fear of our emotions and the fear of being vulnerable. And I realize that the sun is at a interesting spot right now on my face, so this fear is something that has been indoctrinated into our collective for a very long time. We've been essentially taught that our fear, that our emotions are bad or wrong. And what this develops within ourselves is a fear of being vulnerable. And if you've watched the previous videos, you'll see how the fear of vulnerability shows up in our fear of success, our fear of relationships, our fear of being responsible for our lives, right? So our emotions play an even deeper role into a lot of these various different fears that we're talking about. And, you know, we are progressing currently, whereas what I mean by that is we're moving forward emotionally. We're becoming a bit more aware that we have been emotional toddlers as a species. And essentially that just means that we haven't had any education, proper education around our emotions. So we've been emotional toddlers. And emotional toddlers in adult human bodies don't really know how to engage emotionally. And you know, this fear is one that feeds into our separation. It feeds into this illusion that we are separate beings having a separate experience. So this fear feeds into racism, sexism, right? It's feeding into all of these different isms that essentially say because we're separate, or it appears that we're separate, we're different, and I'm better than that. So this fear is not only one that shows up in our lives in the way that it does with, you know, fear of being vulnerable, fear of allowing ourselves to be seen in our wholeness, every single part of ourselves showing up to be seen. This fear also is a plague into some of the deepest issues that we have on the planet. Because when we start to embrace our emotions and come to meet each other fully, call it empathy, being able to relate with another emotionally, we no longer see ourselves as these separate beings. We no longer see ourselves as you're a man and I'm a woman, or you're a Muslim and I'm not any religion, or I'm Jewish, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm the other thing, all these labels that essentially keep us separate. As we no longer fear our emotions, we dissolve those barriers of separation because we start to let people into our process. And I don't know about you, I know in my experience, I picked up stories that it wasn't safe to be emotional. That if I was emotional, I was going to be kicked out of my house and forced to go live somewhere that I really didn't want to live because there was a lot of abuse happening there. And that was a threat to my survival. So I learned that when I'm emotionally expressive, this threatens my safety. And I pushed down all of my emotions for many, many years. And we pick up these stories in our collective. Men have it in a space where it's not masculine to be emotional, and they get taught to bottle down all of their emotions, to just be strong. And then women are taught, well, you're too emotional and irrational and all these things. So we have all these woundings that have put layers around our heart, have hardened our pericardium to say it's not safe to be emotional. And in order to heal our nervous system, in order to come into a sense of wholeness within ourselves, we must be willing to say, hey, I have emotions. I'm an emotional human being. And right now, I'm in grief. Or right now, anger is moving through me. Or right now, I'm joyful. And trust that the people who are in our community, in our field of awareness, are going to show up and say, hey, whoever you're being right now, whatever's moving through you, doesn't matter, because I love you. I think that you're a perfect, beautiful human being, and no matter how you show up in this moment, I am going to stand here and I'm going to thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your willingness to be alive at a time that is incredibly challenging to be alive. What I have come to learn through healing and releasing the fear of being emotional was that this fear blocked me from various different relationships and opportunities and experiences that would have led to me being very emotional. Right? So when we have this bottling up of our emotions, we'll actually block the experiences and the opportunities and all the relationships that are going to bring up our emotional experience. Because we've been taught that that is bad or wrong. And it's important to really understand that our emotions are not ours, as in I don't own anger. I don't own joy. These are energies. They are sentient beings that are not embodied, that live in the astral world and move through human beings. They have their experience in form when they move through us. And it is an electricity, right? Some emotions can feel like sticking your finger in a socket and being jolted. And this surge of energy that moves through us, because we were not properly educated on what emotions are, we get these surges of electricity that move through us that are very strange and foreign and sometimes painful. Or we confuse them as painful. And we thought, okay, well, this is a space that I don't want to experience again, so I'm just going to push this away. And these emotions get deeply lodged and they wrap themselves around our nervous system and they weave themselves through all of our nerves in our body and they impact the very fabric of our neurology and they change us when they are trapped inside of us. And if we are afraid of allowing our emotions to surge, to be released so that they can return back to the astral, then they're going to stay stuck inside of us. And that is essentially what happens when we have a fear of our emotional experience. And the release of emotions that have been inside of us can be so deeply healing and revealing and make us aware of experiences, of ways of being, of behaviors, of pains, of areas that we have not fully shown up for ourselves. These can be revealed if we trust emotions to be released. Now, one of the biggest questions that I get is, how do I safely release anger or rage? Right? These very fiery emotions that have in the past or in the current resulted in yelling at our children or at our loved ones or at our coworkers or at the person in traffic who just, forgot to put their turning signal on. Or it leads us to, slamming doors and breaking things and possibly even verging on the edge of violence. Because when we don't know how to navigate that electrical charge that is these fiery emotions, they can explode through us. They can take over our vehicle and move our vehicle to do things, our vehicle being our body, that we wouldn't normally consciously choose. So because that happens, we've got these conditionings that say, ooh, no, emotions are not, no. Be afraid of anger. Anger makes you do terrible things. So don't release that anger. And what does anger buried deeply in our body do? It turns into cancer, right? It turns into disease. And it will kill us if we don't release it. Because it's like constantly having your internal organs plugged into an electrical socket. And that over time creates a lot of damage. So in these processes of releasing these fiery emotions, you know, today I had a really beautiful experience of grief releasing around my heart. It was so wonderful and painful and revealing and healing and expansive. And right now there's this really yummy electricity that's rolling through my body that I'm just resting in, because I gave grief permission to be revealed and to be released and to return to where grief loves to be, which is grief's home, wherever that is, right? So in processing our fear of emotions, we have to first overcome the fear of being vulnerable, which is the fear of being seen, which then triggers those fears that we're not worthy. So if you didn't watch day 8 of the 21 days, go and watch that one. It was yesterday. It's most recent on my wall. Go and watch that one. It's all about the fear of being worthy, right? Because that is paving into this fear of our emotions, because it stops us from being our true selves, showing up exactly as we are in any given minute, irregardless of what emotion is moving through us at that time. Because when we let ourselves be vulnerable, we open not only ourselves up to be healed, we open up healing for everyone that has that emotion stuck in us. Today, I felt called to share the process that I went through because it changed my day. And I am very clear within myself that a part of my magic here is being truly authentic, so that you get to feel me and I get to feel you, and you get to trust me and know that I'm a genuine human being and I'm having a human experience just like you. And I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm adapting and I'm moving and I'm shaking and I'm piecing it all together and I'm healing and I'm doing all the things because I'm human. And in that sharing, what I was sharing is, you know, our willingness to be vulnerable, it heals the collective, it heals us all. And as we start to go deeper into these emotions that are stored inside of us, we create space for others to also heal and release those emotions that are coming up for them. And you know, grief and sadness, these are tangible ways that we understand releasing them. Maybe it's crying, maybe it's shaking, maybe it's dancing and moving and curling up in a ball. And then when we get to the fiery emotions, the anger and the rage, it's like, well, how do I release this without going against my values, right? Say you have the value, which I implore you to integrate into your life, of ahimsa, which is nonviolence, which means we are nonviolent beings. From that virtue, from that value, if anger wants to move through you and throw something at a wall or hit somebody or cut someone off in traffic, that would violate your values. So how do we integrate and process these fiery emotions that are buried inside of us, that we can usually have an even more pronounced fear to processing them, because when they come up, they move through our bodies in a way that goes against our values. And one thing that I found to be super helpful is, first and foremost, taking the witness perspective, where I am not this emotion that is surfacing, right? This emotion is moving through this vehicle, this body. And from that state, I can remain the witness, so that when anger is ready to be released and I'm like, yeah, let's move this anger, I can talk it out and speak to all the things that that anger, that rage wants to do. And I'll use the example from a month ago, where during this amoeba cleanse that I've shared with you all about, the die-off phase of these amoebas was releasing this rage that was just bubbling and boiling inside of me all day long for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And because I share my home with my partner, and even my puppies, like every single thing they did or he did was like this rage was just boiling at all times. And I remember us driving to, we were driving somewhere, we were driving actually to a sod farm anyways, and he's just talking, and like his talking to this rage was like nails on a chalkboard, and this rage was just like, smash his head on the steering wheel and drive us off the road, right? Because that's what that rage was wanting. These amoebas that were dying and releasing this rage, that was where their consciousness was. So instead of denying that rage an opportunity to be released, whilst also valuing ahimsa and a value that I hold very dearly, which is nonviolence, I parted my awareness from being this anger. And I said from myself to Alex, you know, I have this major wave of rage that's surfacing right now, and it wants to smash your head into the steering wheel and drive us off the road. And, you know, I am going to just talk about all the things that this rage wants to do, because that's the only thing that I can think of to give this rage permission to be seen, felt, heard, and released without actually giving it control over my body to do those things. And the key here is that I didn't raise my voice. I didn't speak from the rage. I spoke from my true essence as the witness, observing this experience, and trusted Alex to be able to hold space for that. And to know that it's not me, this is the rage. And that rage was able to, I talked out all the things and all the pieces and all the visions it was having and all the things it wanted to do. And at the end of it, this rage was no longer there. And actually, that was the last day that I experienced that surge of rage, because it finally got to be released without having to do all those things physically. Never underestimate the power of your words. Now, if I would have spoken through that rage, this is what I want to do from that rage. That's me creating rage. I don't actually know if that would have been a release, because it would have given that rage permission to take over my body, and it would have created a dissonance in the field between me and my partner, because he would have taken that on as rage. So any part of him that had rage still programmed internally would have responded with rage. And I've seen this happen before in our dynamic, when I'm unable to be the witness to the process, to take myself out of it, to speak from my soul and not to speak from the emotional wounding. In those moments when I speak from that emotional wounding, his emotional wounding surfaces up. It triggers that anger or rage in him. So this is very key to trusting your vulnerability, is recognizing the separation, that you're not these emotions, and to speak from your spirit, from your essence, from your heart, from your truth, whatever those emotions are wanting to be expressed, without letting them change the tone and the energy and the essence of what is being expressed. I hope that makes sense. So, thank you for joining me for day 9 of 21 Days of Fear. If this is your first time tuning into this, I'm going live for 21 days talking about all the ways that fear shows up to create stress and chaos and challenges in our life. You can go check out all those videos on my Facebook page or on my IGTV or Rainbow Jones on YouTube. Tune in with me now tomorrow live for day 10, where we're going to be talking about another way that fear shows up in our life. And yeah, until then, I hope that you have a beautiful day or evening wherever you're at in the world. Bye.